Llhaddii. Today, I am going to talk about the language Llhaddii. Llhaddii is spoken in the country of Nsala in a yet-to-be-named different dimension. Most things in this dimension are pretty similar to ours, other than there being no humans or apes, and the sentient species being giant opossums. Megadidelphus sapiens is a big, smart opossum that has taken over the entire planet, just like humans have in our dimension. Maybe even more of their Earth, actually, since there's no Antarctica. The Megadidelphus genus arose from the Thylophorops genus some 2 million years ago, although just like the delineation of Australopithecus and Homo, the delineation of Thylophorops and Megadidelphus is a contentious issue among opossum scientists. But this is a language video, so I will move on. This is the phonology of Llhaddii. Now, if you know a bit about language, you probably know that bilabial consonants are very common cross-linguistically. And you may or may not be surprised that there are none in Llhaddii. That is because there's no bilabial consonants in any language in this entire world, this entire version of Earth, because opossums don't have fine enough control over their lips to produce bilabial consonants. There's also no dental consonants, because opossums just have fangs instead of the dam of teeth that humans have. In this version of Earth, lingulabial consonants fill the role of being near universal. They're made by pressing the tip of your tongue to your top lip. So this is the official romanization of the language of Llhaddii. This is what you're going to see on all the signs here. Don't get intimidated by the digraphs and trigraphs. Each letter or letter combination corresponds to one sound and one sound only, which is more you could say for English, so... While we're on the topic of writing, we might as well look at Llhaddii's own writing system. It's a pretty simple alphabet. It can be written top to bottom or left to right, but the latter is more common nowadays with the influence of English-speaking tourists. Here's the sounds each letter corresponds to in the IPA, of course, and here are some words written in it. The name of Llhaddii and the name of Nsala. So, let's talk a bit about the grammar of Llhaddii. Llhaddii is an agglutinative language, though it doesn't have nearly as long of words as some agglutinative languages do. Every word has slots before and after it that different prefixes and suffixes go into. The metaphor used is often like beads on a string. In Llhaddii, it's mostly prefixes. There's only a few suffixes, and those are derivational rather than grammatical, so I don't care about them right now. Another aspect of the grammar of Llhaddii is the animacy hierarchy. Because of the animacy hierarchy, Llhaddii makes use of the direct and inverse cases. In any sentence, the default assumption is that the subject is the one higher on the hierarchy, and the object is the one lower on the hierarchy. This is the direct case. If the opposite is true, if the subject is lower on the hierarchy than the object, the verb is marked with the inverse case, and in Llhaddii, the direct case is left unmarked. Llhaddii also has agreement. Verbs must agree in animacy with their subject, adjectives must agree with the animacy of what they're modifying, and adverbs must agree with the agreement of the verbs and adjectives that they're modifying. This agreement actually ends up making a pretty interesting formality system. In typical conversation, if you talk about yourself, you mark everything with the opossum animacy, because even if you're technically not an opossum, that's still the highest animacy. That's the person animacy. But if you do want to be more formal, you can mark your verbs and adjectives with the animate agreement instead. This is basically calling yourself an animal, degrading yourself to elevate whoever you're talking to. It's sort of like in those old-timey stories when people call themselves this humble servant. You can take it a step further, marking yourself with the inanimate to be extra formal, but it's very old-fashioned and it only really survives in prayers. So you'll either sound like you're using thou and thee or speaking Chaucer or something, or like you're some sort of religious fanatic. Well, that's if you're an opossum. If you're not an opossum, you probably just will sound like someone who can't speak the language. This does also go the other way. It is very common to mark someone else's verbs and adjectives in the animate when you're insulting them. Normally in a friendly way, sometimes in a just genuine insulting way. As for marking someone as inanimate, that's considered verbal assault, and will land you in jail for a week with a giant fine, and if you are not an opossum, will also get you banned from Nsala. which is basically the same as getting banned from the whole dimension, because Nsala is the only country letting any of us in. So, don't do that. Don't do that. Llhaddii also has a proximate obviate distinction. The proximate is like a spotlight, highlighting whatever the most important party in a sentence is, or, of course, whatever the speaker deems the most important party. The obviate is the opposite, marking something as less important. And in Llhaddii, the proximate is left unmarked, and the obviate is the one that's marked. Not every sentence uses a proximate and obviate, so if there's no obviate marked, you could just assume that every party in the sentence, all the subject and object and whatever, are all of equal importance. But if something is marked as obviate, then whatever isn't obviate is the proximate and therefore the most important. This is, of course, used to call one party in a sentence or one character in a story more important than the others, but it's much more commonly used to clarify sentences where both parties are the same animacy. In the sentence, the fox saw the wolf and it killed it. Who killed who? Llhaddii has special obviate pronouns as well as requiring the verb to agree with the obviateness of its subject. So, we can pretty easily differentiate these. Let's say the fox is proximate. If the verb kill is left unmarked, then we know the fox killed the wolf. If it's marked to agree with the obviate, then we know the wolf killed the fox. And, of course, whichever it means the fox will just be the normal it, and whichever it means the wolf will be the obviate it. Yay! In English, we have words like to and on and for. In Llhaddii, a lot of those are actually lumped onto the verb. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them. And they are called applicatives. What applicatives do is give a verb an extra argument. The verb jump, for example, can only take one argument. I jump, you jump, it jumps. But you can add an argument in English by saying jump to. You can't just say, I jump to. You have to say, I jump to the other side. In Llhaddii, that is done using an applicative. You can also do something like, I cook food, and turn that into I cook food for you. The applicatives that Llhaddii has are on the screen right now. And that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about the language. I definitely recommend you come and visit Nsala sometime. It's really beautiful here. There's like a lot of really interesting stuff to do. The food is great. The people are amazing. And even if you don't speak Llhaddii like at all, you can get by pretty well with just English. Maybe don't come here if you're scared of snakes, though. Even if you're not scared of them exactly, you should still be wary because snakes are quite literally everywhere. For one, Nsala is just in an area with a lot of wild snakes. Luckily, only one species is venomous, and it's a bright blue, so you'll be able to avoid it pretty easily. And even if you're really stupid and you don't avoid it, the venom isn't that bad. It's not deadly, it just makes you break out in hives, which does suck a lot. Ask me how I know. So don't be stupid. The two main gods here are also a three-tailed snake goddess of life, death, and rebirth, and the sun god, who is conceptualized as a snake swimming across the sky. So there's snake imagery everywhere. Like, think the prevalence of, like, crosses in a church. Everywhere. Honestly, maybe it's even more than that. Everyone has some form of snake jewelry. There's paintings of snakes in damn near every building. Street vendors are selling whole fried snakes to eat, sometimes along with boiled snake eggs. People have pet snakes, and those two might sound contradictory. Eating snakes and having them as pets, but they're not, and people will get offended if you try to say otherwise. Ask me how I know. And the same way that places in our dimension have stray cats and dogs, there's stray snakes everywhere, all over the streets. They are domesticated though, so they're very friendly, and if you're not scared of snakes, you should pet the stray snakes. They're really awesome. Something else that's pretty cool about this obsession with snakes is that Nsala actually has the concept of the Ouroboros. So that's a cool little coincidence. The name of the Ouroboros in Llhaddii is Tatalan, which seems weird because if you remember the phonology chart, ta does not exist in the language of Llhaddii. And that's because the idea of Tatalan is older than the language of Llhaddii. It's older than its entire language family. It's older than the Nsala settling this area. It's one of the oldest religious symbols in this area, only being preceded by the ideas of snakes as gods. Both ideas stretch back to the Stone Age. There's an ancient myth, probably like 3,000 years old according to some scholars, about the first opossum seeing the serpent right before it starts to eat its own tail and become tsatsalan. And I wonder what they were thinking seeing that. Probably something like Tasi sinti sirtasala. Sinilis nadal ndo sin se etenya ida. Is sinus nazata gasi kirshada nasanta fenada enadatu. Nadatu kinaneta. Anasadin akita ndo linanelen ndo. Linene sikas aniga likinza ale ndo. Sinanash ndo akerlin ndo anani te akerna sudase. Sisibel ndo kikudo ndo sihleder tasuda. Tanete ta fa taleze ketalez. Linetege linanila tanada dina tanada shu. Ili lezelene lidani di. Ili soni duni nanalani di. Kilane datina da suda nakishidi. Sinili pazata sinada sisudata. Adanina adani se palase.